Welcome to Dramatic Pause, a Rose Theater podcast. On today's episode, Deborah Wicks La Puma joins us to talk about Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus and her job as a composer for children's theater.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dramatic Pause. And we are so lucky because we have Deborah Wicks La Puma here with us today. She is a TYA composer, and we are so lucky to have her on. Welcome, Deborah. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
We are so excited to have you. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about some of the work that you've done and a little bit of your history with theater?
Sure. So I work as a composer in theater for young audiences, and I've been doing this since about 1993, so a really long time. And happily, over the course of my career, I've written about 17 musicals for young audiences with 8 different playwrights, lyricists, and of course, you will know Mo Willems, who wrote the book to Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. And he has been a collaborator of mine for the past 10 years, and we've worked on 4 shows together. Pigeon is the latest show that we've done, and it opened at the Kennedy Center in 2019.
Yes, that's so awesome. We've had a few of your shows on our stage as time has gone on here. But yes, we're very excited to have Pigeon happening right now.
That's right. You had Ella Enchanted also with the wonderful playwright Karen Zacharias. Was that last year or the year before?
Yes, it was the fall of 2019. That was our season that got kind of upended at the end of it due to the pandemic, but we got a good chunk of it in, including Ella in the fall.
Yay. No, the Rose is like my favorite theater that I've never actually been able to visit yet. But I'm going to get out there. I'm going to see you guys in person.
Yes, we hope so. That would be great. And so, Deborah, where are you located then?
I am in Southern California. I'm in Anaheim, nearby Disneyland. That's how I always tell people. It's not quite Los Angeles, but it's fairly close to there. And we love the weather out here, and this is where all my family is. Although I started my career in Washington, D.C. So a lot of the connections that I have for TYA are in Washington, D.C. So, for example, my shows with Mo, a lot of them premiered at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. Ella Enchanted also premiered in Washington, D.C. So I've been sort of living the bi-coastal life for a while until, of course, the pandemic hit. And now, thanks to Zoom, I guess we can be everywhere.
Right. Yes, absolutely. You can be in Omaha while hanging out at home. So, so what made TYA the area that you wanted to pursue?
Well, I didn't set out to be a TYA composer. I did get my graduate degree in composing for musical theater, just any musical theater. And I didn't even know TYA was really a genre of theater until I started my career in 1993, again in Washington, D.C., and I just went to every theater I could find and gave them my resume and said, "Hi, I'll do anything in the theater. Give me a job." And I just kept getting jobs in theaters that were dedicated to young audiences. And the more I worked on these shows, the more I loved them. It also helped that I started my family when we moved to Washington, D.C. And so having kids really made me appreciate having great art for kids. And my 3 daughters really grew up in the theater. I would bring them to rehearsals. They would hang out. They would even be little mini dramaturgs a lot of times when we were working on shows. They would point out like, "That doesn't make sense, Mommy," or "Why didn't she do this?" Or, and it's great. It's like you have your own little built-in dramaturgs in the back with their crayons and building blocks. And so, yeah, I just fell in love with TYA. And it's so funny, the more I worked in TYA, I still go back and forth and do some adult theater. But when I go to adult theater, I really notice a difference in the energy and the efficiency of storytelling. And one of the things I love about TYA is, well, not only is it always from the point of view of a young person or dealing with issues that young people are going through, but mostly it's hopeful stories, right? Stories where There are problems and challenges, but it always ends on a hopeful note. And I love that. I guess musical theater people are naturally hopeful, energetic people to begin with. So it just was natural for me. But, the other thing I love about TYA is that it can't be too self-indulgent, because kids get restless, right? If you sit in a moment too long, or you forget about the story moving forward, they'll let you know, right? They'll wiggle. They'll say, "Can I go to the bathroom?" They'll look at their programs, all those things. So over the years, we've really been, as storytellers, we're trying to narrow down what are those beats that you need to tell the story, how long you need to stay in that moment, and when do you need to move forward. So to me, it's like a wonderful, efficient way of storytelling. It's like the bonsai tree of musical theater. You just clip it down to its essence, and it's beautiful that way.
I love that. I love that metaphor of the bonsai tree. And so, so when you're thinking about a show, how does it all come together? Do you guys, do writers come to you? Do you come to writers? Do you guys have people you work with frequently? How does that process start?
Well, it can really happen multiple ways. So, for example, the Kennedy Center brought me on to work with Mo Willems. So they already knew they wanted to work with Mo because he was interested in adapting his books to the stage. And so they came to me and they said, "Hey, you want to work on this?" And I was like, "Yes, I do. Please sign me up." And we've had a great time with that. But there have been other shows. For example, at Bay Area Children's Theater, 2 years ago, we premiered a show called She Persisted, which was based on the children's book by Chelsea Clinton about 13 American women who changed the world. And so in that case, I was working with an old college friend of mine, Adam Tobin, who I just met at a reunion and was like, "You know what? We should write a show together." And he said, "Sure, that sounds like a great idea." So I approached my friends at Bay Area Children's Theater. I said, "Adam and I would love to write a show. Here's some ideas." And She Persisted was on that list, and they got really excited about that. And that's how that came about. So yeah, sometimes the opportunities drop on my front door, and other times I go out looking for them if I'm really excited about a project.
Nice, very cool. So it's kind of a little bit of a mixed bag, just whatever works for your moment.
Exactly.
And so then once you have a show in mind, once you have a writer, how do you start composing music? How do you find that inspiration?
Yeah, well, we always start with what's the story and what do we, I talk with my playwright and or lyricist about what is the sound of this show. And we often make a playlist of songs to inspire the show. So sometimes they might be time specific, or genre specific. So for example, Mo and I did the show Naked Mole Rat Gets Dressed, the rock experience. So Mo had this idea that he wanted rock and roll because it's rebellious and it's fun. And so we made a playlist of all of our favorite rock songs. And we would reference that to be like, I want the energy of Queen in this song, or I love what David Bowie did here, or, Elton John, let's have an Elton John piano riff. And so it's just a wonderful place for us to start talking about what is the sound of this show going to be. There's other times where it's not quite as direct a line. So for example, with Pigeon, we wanted more of I love brass, and so I wanted to, and the Kennedy Center had money for brass. So I said, "Ooh, look, let's think of all the great brass sounds out there." So we made a playlist that had Stevie Wonder, it had Frank Sinatra, it had Santana, lots and lots of different uses of brass. But just that energy and trying to, Uptown Funk also has a great brass section. So that was what the playlist for Pigeon was based on.
Sure. How cool. I love that. Yeah. Now that you say that, thinking about, I've seen the show a few times now. I'm like, oh, I can kind of see that. Yeah. Okay. I love that. So, and so then you compose the music, but then you work with a lyricist as far as what the words will be.
That's right. And so for Pigeon, Mo himself was the lyricist, but he did bring on a friend to help him write the book, Tom Warburton. And so, and part of that, it was very funny when we started working on the show because Mo and I had already written a couple of shows together. He doesn't necessarily need a co-playwright, but he felt this story particularly because he felt so close to the character of the pigeon that he kind of wanted a second opinion. And so he brought Tom in to help him kind of crack that nut open, which it turned out to be really, really fun because then, I mean, Tom works in LA and he works in animation. So he has a great sense of humor, a great sense of timing, and he and Mo are best friends, for years going back. So they had a huge rapport. So every time we would work together, it was, basically I just was dying of laughter the entire time because they were each trying to cut each other up all the time.
And so, so since Pigeon is on our stage right now, do you have a favorite memory or moment that you had while creating that show?
I have so many fun memories of creating it. Yeah, we did a number of workshops at the Kennedy Center, and one of the workshops, there's a moment where there's a dream ballet, if you will, where Pigeon is by himself and he's singing about the bus that just left, and it's like the love of his life that he lost, and it's called What Could Have Been, and it's this very torch song moment. And then we put a dream ballet in there where the bus comes back in his mind, of course. And we had it just as a puppet, and they sort of dance around each other while there's background vocals going, it's very romantic. And then we realized, well, wait a minute, we have an actor on stage with a bus puppet. She should sing. Because why not? Because we're in a dream moment. Buses can sing in dream moments. And so we had that realization. And so I got to add in the bus kind of doing a counter melody to Pigeon. And then we're thinking, like, what are the lyrics? What would the bus sing? And then we realized the bus needs to sing, roomy, room, room, roomy, room, room. So that was hilarious. And the actors all loved it. And we had a great time. It was great.
I love that. That is one of my favorite parts of the show. Well, and the Panic at the Bus Stop is the song that always ends up stuck in my head, though.
Yes.
That's always the one all of us box office people were leaving the show at the end of the night humming Panic at the Bus Stop. So. But what about you? Do you have a favorite song for the show?
Strangely enough, Panic at the Bus Stop, I think, is my favorite song. And maybe it's because it is such a little earworm, but it's my little music nerd self. Well, first of all, like when we were outlining the show, and they're like, okay, and then we're going to have a song where everybody panics at the bus stop, and I was thinking, like, well, how am I going to musicalize that in a way that you would actually want to hear and listen to, right? Because without making you feel panicked, but still have the energy of what that word means. So that's where I came up with this sort of salsa Latin groove to it. And what was fun for me is that each of the three passengers has their own reason for panicking. And so they each kind of have a verse that's musically specific to them. But then all of their three different ways of panicking overlap and come together at the end of the song. So it's a total music nerd moment of like overlapping counterpuntal melodies. And that just makes me very happy. And it is a little bit of a earworm.
It's so catchy. It's a bop for sure. But no, that's awesome. And then, so you kind of mentioned that you've done a lot of shows, and you've gotten to do a lot of shows with Mo. For everyone who's listening on this podcast knows that we were going to do Naked Mole Rat Rock Experience, and that was one of our shows we lost to the pandemic.
Yeah.
That I'm sure we're very hopeful to get back as well. But out of all the shows you've done, do you have one that's sort of special to you?
Well, you never ask a mother who their favorite child is. And I really do feel like all these shows are my children. So sometimes it's like your favorite is the one that's sitting in your lap currently. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I will say that I love my work with Mo. It's been so wonderful to work with him because his imagination and just his approach to life is so joyful and quirky and fun. So I have loved that. I will say I also truly love the show She Persisted that I did at Bay Area Children's Theater. That one was just near and dear to my heart because it's about persistent and fabulous women. And within that, I was writing sort of moments of meeting all these amazing women. And as I was writing songs for each one of these women, it's like within these songs, it was helping me to persist and helping me to be my best self and be creative. So that show really fed me as well emotionally. I love that show. But really, my gosh, if I went back and started talking about all of my shows, it would just be a love fest. I love them all. I love Ella Enchanted. Oh my God, I love Ella Enchanted as well.
Oh, yes, we loved Ella Enchanted. I definitely think it's one that's kind of near and dear to our Rose family as well.
The She Said No moment, it always made me cry when I was singing it and writing it. And yeah, I love that show too.
Yes, just, yeah, really, really beautiful show. And from such a strong book too. I think there's a lot of people who connect with the book, and the show does justice to the book, I think.
Oh, well, thank you. It was a difficult one to adapt because it is an amazing book. And of course, the movie really doesn't, it's not a really consistent adaptation from what the book is. And I really love where the book was coming from. So we were very close to that book and we wanted to really honor the book. But we had to also, break down a small YA novel into 60 minutes. Mm-hmm. So we had to lose some really important characters like Mandy and Arita, her best friend at the finishing school. And so those were hard cuts, but you do what you got to do. Efficiency in TYA writing. That's what you do.
Yes, you had to bonsai tree that book.
Exactly.
Well, that is awesome. So we try to do this a lot on our podcast whenever we're talking to someone who's got an interesting job in the arts. I think everyone kind of knows what actors do, but people don't realize all the other players in the arts game. And so if there's a young person listening to this podcast today and thinking, man, that sounds like such a cool job, I would love to do that job. What kind of things should they be doing or thinking about right now as a young person, and what kind of schooling should they be looking at in the future?
Well, first of all, I will say it is an awesome job. I love my job because as a musical theater composer, I get to compose from lots of different points of view and lots of different styles. And I started writing songs when I was a little kid. I would just be wandering around my backyard and I'd be humming and making up tunes. And then my mom gave me piano lessons starting at 9. And instead of practicing my scales, I was writing tunes on the piano. And then when I was in high school, I was writing songs about boyfriends who didn't want to date me anymore, the Taylor Swift line of composition. And it wasn't until I got to college that I really fell in love with musical theater and telling stories through music. So for young people, I would say, if you like writing little tunes, one of the things you can do is learn to play an instrument, of course, and learn how to write it down. So if you were a playwright, you would, of course, need to know how to read and write. And I think to be a really great composer, it really helps to be able to read and write music and to do as many different styles of music as you can, not just do pop music or whatever is most in your life, but to really reach out to different styles of music that maybe you don't naturally run into in your everyday, and ask yourself, what is it that makes that music tick? Why does it sound this way? What are the instruments being played? What are the rhythms that I hear in this? So that's kind of what I do in my job. I did go and get some fancy degrees. You don't need to necessarily get fancy degrees, but But just being able to express yourself through your music. And of course, it's handy to be able to make your own demos. So I got a voice degree as well as a composition degree, and I played piano. So that was super helpful for me to be able to play songs for people and say, like, here's the way this song goes, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, and then be able to sing it. So I would also suggest doing that.
Nice. No, that's a great starting point for anyone who's out here humming and tip tapping their toes and making up things, as they're popping down the sidewalk. That this is a great place to start. And I will put one little plug in for anybody who is listening and thinking, man, yeah, that would be cool. The Rose does offer private voice and group voice and musical theater, and all of those classes happen year round. But we also have camps that happen in the summer. So if you want to just get your feet wet for a week and see how it goes, there's lots of opportunity for that here at the Rose. So our number is 402-345-4849, and you can find it all on our website, www.rosetheater.org. And Deborah, I want to thank you so much for coming on today, for taking some time to talk about your job and your experiences with writing. We so enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. It's so fun to talk about it, and good luck with the show. I hope it's a huge success for you guys and bringing lots of joy.
Yes, absolutely. And just as a reminder for everyone out there, if you are a member, you get 4 tickets to Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus as part of your membership. And if you are not a member, there are still tickets available, and you can call the box office at that same number I dropped earlier in this message and come out to see Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. Thus far, we've had just one weekend. We're about to go into our second weekend, and it's been such a wonderful show. It's been a joy to have our socially distanced audiences in there, and we hope that you can join us. So thank you again, Deborah. We so enjoyed having you, and we
Yay!
hope to get out to Omaha soon.
Yes, yay! Can't wait.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.